your CRM should be your source of truth. So even though you could be using intent data platforms like Lusha, that's telling you that this company is looking for sales training, you pull that into your CRM because that's where your place of knowledge bank of capturing information, and then you build your outreach messages or whatever messaging framework that you want to build or whatever pursuit plan that you're looking at. Do some research, find a reason to reach out, give a little bit of value through an insight-led approach. Don't be so forceful in asking for a meeting, right? It doesn't always have to be like that. It can be a nurture-led approach, and over time, it will deliver a return on investment. Welcome to another episode of the How to Sell podcast. I'm your host, Luigi Prestinenzi. I just want to say thank you very much for showing up. If this is the first time you were joining us, welcome. We're really, really excited to share this content with you. Now, this is a podcast which is a little bit different. Yes, it's all about how to sell, but we look at things from a different perspective. We actually interview buyers and we look at the process from the buyer's lens so that we can help you determine what buyers need to go through, what process they need to go through to get to that point of decision. And if you're a long-time listener, we just want to say thank you for showing up. And please don't forget to subscribe to wherever you're listening to this podcast. This way, it'll allow us to continue to bring great guests and great content. So I'm joined by my co-host, Dave. So welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Louis. I was wondering when you were going to intro me. It was taking a while to get into there.
Well, mate, I'm still struggling. And for those, if you are a long-time listener, you'll know that I held this seat on my own for a long time. So I'm still struggling with that whole concept of being a co-host.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
I was struggling this week because you changed your title on LinkedIn to co-host of the How to Sell podcast. And it was a bit of a, and part of me, Dave, I thought to myself, do I really need you to host this podcast?
Well, you do need a bit of carrying. So who else better?
It's kind of, and I know, look, not all of our listeners would love football, right? Or the round ball, I say the real football, right? I don't want to piss some of our listeners off, but it's kind of like saying
Just lost
Chelsea
all
don't really
American
need a coach
listeners.
to lose. They're going to lose pretty much with any coach they've got, right?
Louis, how dare you say that? Why would you say that for?
So, just to bring again, let's bring a bit of personality. So David is he's a Chelsea supporter, and unfortunately they're going through a really, really great period where they can't even win a game even after buying like 40
It's a
players.
rebuilding.
But we won't go there because this is not
rebuilding. Everyone goes through it. We're rebuilding. Just a little bit more expensive than they first thought.
We're building a whole league with the amount of players. But we're not going to go, this is not a podcast. You know what? We actually should create a sales podcast for people that like football. That would be that's actually a pretty good idea. But Dave, let's jump into last week.
Yes.
We decided to do this week. We're doing a bit of a, I'd say, solo episode, right? Because it's just me and you. But we're building on the episode we did with Tim because there was so many great takeaways from Tim, who's Director of Enablement at Lusha. And there was a moment at the end where Tim spoke about how we initially reached out to him and the process.
Yeah, like he mentioned during that episode that you reached out to him via email when he started a new role. So I'm hearing that trigger alert in your head, yeah? So talk to us about how did you know he started a new role? Share the process on that initial outreach message, and what value did you provide to Tim in order for him to pick up the phone? Because I imagine, anyone starting a new role, they're getting information overload. It's crazy, it's busy, let alone getting hit up by saying, congratulations on a new job, which everyone gets 1,000 times now when they change roles on LinkedIn. What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And that's why I wanted to, we spoke about building on the episode with Tim, right? To make this a very, very tactical podcast, a very tactical episode for our listeners and our audience on the playbook that I ran to not just get Tim into a conversation, but help him or move that conversation to a point of decision, which was ultimately a contract, right? So, and you are right. I used the trigger event of Tim starting a new role. But I think the first thing to identify, I already had a list designed in LinkedIn. So I was using Sales Navigator. There was a search that I had pulled of certain companies of a certain size, and I essentially set up a trigger so that if there was any ever if there was any change that occurred in that organization, it would then let me know that there's been a person that started in the role. And so it
So is that a
happened that
company alert, like saying they're
yeah,
hiring or they've just hired? Because you weren't a connection with Tim before he
no,
joined Lusha, so you didn't get that automatic thing that everyone gets when someone they're connected to
no,
moves.
I
Is
wasn't connected with him.
okay.
So I let the tool. So in Sales Navigator, you can set it up so that if there's any ever change in leadership, it'll let you know. You can also do the same in for example, if you set up Google RSS feeds or a Google feed, right? You can
Yeah,
have
the
a
Google
Google alert
alerts and things. Yeah.
and it'll tell you if the company's in the news. But I set this up in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, so I was automatically advised that hey, they've got a new person. And so what I did was I then checked and go, you know what, perfect persona, the enablement leader. Um, so that was my first thing. I had, and those alerts are happening all the time. So I'm seeing in my target accounts, not just my target accounts, but particular lists that I've built. Um, I'm letting the tool do the work for me to tell me when is the right time to potentially reach out, because that new hire or starting a new role is a really, really powerful trigger to be leveraging in your outreach process.
Question for you. Now, these triggers are coming in, it could be thick and fast
Mm.
depending on what's happening in the market. Um, were you reactive and, we're trying to multitask and then went out to Tim, or do you set yourself up with a certain amount of time today to check these triggers or to check these lists? Do you have a bit of a process is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
get to for that, because we all get too busy and you can let a lot of this slip. Yeah. So what's your process?
Yeah. So look, from a business development perspective, I have a certain target. I've got a list of people, of companies that I'm targeting, right? So at any
Okay.
given time, there's my hot list, which are the companies that my ideal customer profiles that I'm like, you know what, these are kind of perfect. They're in the perfect quadrant for what we do, yeah, or for what I do. So obviously, I'm always checking that to make sure, because that have for me those accounts. There's a higher propensity for them to convert when I talk to them, right? Then I've got my other list, but my main list is the one that I'm constantly, checking. Um, because I'm not just always, and this is the thing we also have to discuss as well, right? A lot of people think about prospecting and go, you know what, I just need to prospect. I need to develop a cadence, hit this list as many times as I can in the next 2 weeks, and then I'll move on to the next record if I don't engage with them.
Hmm.
That's a very, very short term strategy that, you know what, if you've got a huge TAM, so, what is TAM? If you've got a huge addressable market and you've got an endless list of customers to talk to, yeah, that could yield a return for you. But for me, I'm like, I want to squeeze as much juice out of my list as possible. Yeah. And I'm not just looking at the first 2 weeks. I mean, I'm building relationships and nurturing prospects for, like, in some cases, 6 to 12 months.
Hmm.
So I'm not always looking to talk to them today about closing a deal today, because in some cases the timing is just not right. Yeah. For a whole variety of reasons. This is why building a robust relationship funnel is actually really important. So just to answer your initial question, I identified I've got my hot list of companies that I'm always kind of looking at. Some they are in a cadence of outreach that I'm using because timing. There's certain triggers. There's particular messages that I'm using, and some are just sitting there where I'm just watching. Yeah, it's like I'm a watch list. It's like the stock market. Yeah, you've got your watch list. You haven't bought them yet.
You're just
You're
watching them.
waiting for the right time to purchase, right?
How are you managing the list? I just want to get a little bit nitty
Yeah.
gritty there. Is it in your CRM? Is it just sales nav? Are you putting it into a spreadsheet? Everyone always gets, I need a tool for this, or that they have to go to the
Yeah.
management and requesting funds for a tool. Is there
Yeah.
a
So
low fi way?
at that time when I was talking to Tim, it was in HubSpot, right?
Okay.
So HubSpot was kind of that was my gold list. That's where I would put all my data in.
Okay.
Yes, it's kind of working simultaneously with Sales Navigator. So if something triggered, great, I'd bring that trigger, pop it into HubSpot, put my notes, come up with my message, and then start the outreach process, right? Now, again, I also want to put a caveat on this. This is not a model where you can go, you know what, I'm going to be running 1,000 contacts through some sequence, and I'm just going to put, this personalization at scale and all that crap. This is not that model, right? And for those critics who might be saying, oh, yeah, but you probably won't close as many deals. I actually mapped this out and you were part of that process. When I
Mhm.
did this, I mapped out like a 6-week prospecting campaign. And from that 6-week prospecting campaign, we closed, near on 750K in business. And we booked from 57 prospects. I booked 27 meetings, and we closed that much business, right? So we actually mapped it all out. We mapped pretty much every particular metric from that cadence, just
Yeah.
from that contacts, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's things that were booked in the second and the third month, but just that set of contacts that we put through from that list that I
Mhm.
initially developed, and Tim was part of that list, right? So just to go back a step, your CRM should be your source of truth. So even though you could be using intent data platforms like Lusha, that's telling you that this company is looking for sales training. You could pull that into your CRM, because that's where your place of, your knowledge bank of capturing information, and then you build your outreach messages or whatever messaging framework that you want to build, or whatever pursuit plan that you're looking at. Because, we might have a pursuit plan, which with Tim, it was an email phone. It was LinkedIn email phone, actually. Um,
So
in some
explain that
cases,
explain that to everyone listening. So
yeah,
you emailed, you hit him up on LinkedIn, and you called him. Was this all like one after the other? Bang, bang,
yeah,
bang?
pretty much together, right? So it was a multi-channel outreach. I threaded. I first initially did my LinkedIn and said, it was a really simple. I can't remember the exact term. I think something like congratulations on the role at Lusha.
Mhm.
Huge Lusha lover, right? Actually put that there. Huge Lusha fan. Been part of been a customer from pretty much day one, right? And that was the truth, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, then I also shot him an email with a very similar message, but in that email, I actually said, I've got a little bit of feedback on the sales process that I've experienced with Lucia. When you got your feet under the table, would love to share this with you.
I love that. It's a bit of
Sent it
intrigue.
out.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit of
Yeah,
a
out of
tease, a
curiosity.
carrot. Yeah, that's right.
So it was like, awesome to hear about this role. I think and I knew it was the first enablement person they brought on, right? Because I was watching that business.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to share some insight, so that's what I said. I've got some feedback on the sales process. I think you'll find insightful when you get your feet under the desk, because I was also using empathy. Yeah.
Mhm.
First started, probably got a ton of things. When you've got your feet under the desk, let me know. When's a good time to connect? I'm happy to share this with
And that
you.
was quite short, yeah? Like, that was a nice,
Very short.
short, sharp email, bit of value, not
Yeah.
even value, just intrigue, um,
Correct.
and value that he could derive from you, from that conversation, right? So,
Yeah.
like, why not? Pardon the interruption, but I have to let you know about this free resource. The Grow Forum newsletter has over 10,000 subscribers that are learning how to sell. Each and every week, we send you tips, strategies, and also some tools and tech on how to achieve the most out of your sales pipeline. If you're ready to level up, sign up for free at growforum.io/newsletter and get the first issue this week.
And I think and as you know, I'm a very big fan of insight-led approach, right? So I've mystery shopped, I've bought products, I've gone to events. In my prospecting process, I want to earn the right to get a meeting. And if that means I have to go on a shopping cart and purchase an actual product from someone to get that experience, and then I can use that experience in my outreach message, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Right. If I've got to go, and I did this when I was prospecting into an automotive business, a very, very well known German brand. I went to 6 different locations. Now, I'm not saying you do this for every single prospect, right? Otherwise, you just be in a zone of research. But depending on the potential size of the opportunity, will
It's worth
dictate
it.
the type of research that you do. Yeah. So historically, when I've sold into large enterprise opportunities, I would spend a lot of time doing that research. Yeah. Because
Mhm.
I want to be able to then I have a better understanding, and I can really create a very insightful led message.
Yeah.
If it's a smaller opportunity, you might go, okay, um, I'm going to do just a little bit, of pragmatic research. But you can actually do this, and this is also something that we obviously teach this in the Sales OS program, right? But this is something part of my practice is as you're building your list, you can, whether you're doing it on a spreadsheet or you're doing it in your CRM, you can do an element of this pragmatic research. You should be always doing a bit of Google, checking in the news, maybe going on their site, having a look, depending on what you sell as well. Yeah. So, depending on what you sell will dictate what you're looking for. You want to be looking for something that indicates that there could be a potential problem that you could help them solve. And then you want to be able to come up with some form of, like, people call it a value hypothesis, right? But you want to come up with some form of message that, if you have that conversation and you deliver that message, it's going to earn the right for them to say, you know what, or earn the right for you to progress that conversation. And this is the key. This is not a transactional pop 500 people in a sequencing tool and just push it out. This is exact methodology that I use with Tim. So just to go back a step, I used the tools available, Sales Navigator, to tell me there was a change in one of my accounts that I wanted to talk to. I then created a message, leveraged a multi-channel. So I leveraged multiple channels to reach out to get his attention. I got his attention immediately. There was a soft CTA, right, with a bit of empathy. We just happened to jump on a call very, very quickly into the process. And then from there, I did share that insight and said, this is what I've observed. And then I just started nurturing, right? And it didn't take too long to get into a point of, hey, this is an actual gap that I've been brought on to fill.
Yeah, you.
Okay.
I think that process there, and that was a great breakdown, right? From everything you did, and you don't have to follow that same approach.
Mm.
A good friend of the show, Alan Dibb, the author of the One Page Marketing Plan, one thing that he does quite well is that if someone signs up on his website, he would send them a book. But he won't just
Yep.
send them one book, he'll send them two books, one for them and one that they can either give to one of their staff or gift to someone
Yeah.
else. Then he follows up with a call and an email asking about what they thought of the book. So it gives him the right to follow up and ask a
Yeah.
question. And look what you did there. You signed up. You were a long-time user of the platform. You might have just signed up for a free trial and
Yeah.
have some feedback on the onboarding sequence. Like that literally takes 5 minutes to do,
Mm.
but that would put that potential seller, way above others who are just trying to reach out with a generic
Yeah.
message.
And again, there's multiple ways to do this, right? And you can do this across, like I've heard, this isn't specific to my market, etc. And this is not about me putting tickets on myself, Dave, because I'm not one that
Are you sure?
likes self promotion, right, mate? Um, but when we booked a meeting with one of the most senior enablement people at HubSpot, and we did that, and we flew to Dublin to have the meeting, right? So
Yeah.
for those of our audience that knows, to get to Dublin from Australia, it's a fair distance. It takes a long time to get there, right? So it was a very similar approach, right? Obviously, I had insight coaching a few reps across HubSpot, had really good observation about some of the gaps, and I was able to leverage that into my message to get that meeting with the person I needed to in Dublin. Yeah. So again, it's a consistent method that when you execute, and that insight led approach. Now, it doesn't matter what role you might be saying, but I'm an SDR, right? I've got all these, this pressure on activities. You can absolutely still facilitate this. You just might not do it to the depth that I do, because I don't have, that pressure of booking, 5 meetings a day. But I can tell you that I'm getting between 15 to 25% of the prospects that I reach out to in a meeting, right? Because I'm spending a bit more time researching. And to validate this, our great friend Alice from who was at DocuSign, who became one of the number one BDRs in Australia, was because he was only doing 12. He was reaching out to 12 on average, 12 prospects a day, booking 4 to 5 meetings, right? His target was 50 outreach contacts a day, but he was not even doing half of that, right? Because he was spending a bit more time at the front end because he was looking for the outcome was a certain outcome he was looking for. He wasn't too worried about the level of activity because he knew if he did a bit more research, he'd get a better outcome, right? So you can still do this. You can still facilitate this if you're an SDR, if you're a full cycle AE, and you have to do more prospecting, which we are seeing that move happen more and more now, which I'm so happy about that, because I think AEs
Mhm.
who can
Yeah.
self-generate, it just, can be,
And
it's
that
such
didn't
a
take
better
him
out.
long from memory. I think that was like a
No.
3 month turnaround from going
Yeah, we
from
ran
crazy
pretty
activity.
quickly, right?
I
Yeah.
remember you were on the coaching calls, the group ones there, he brought it
Mm,
down, focused more, and then his pipeline just blew up.
yeah. And this is the thing, there's a lot of great content out there, from our great friends at Lavender, Jen Allen,
Mm,
Morgan Ingram. There's so many incredible people out there that'll talk about, okay, well, how do you create a great, email, and what should the email structure be? The 50 words, subject line 3, keep it mobile friendly, get spam words, keep it really sharp and short. And that's all great. But the key to a successful outreach process is that initial research, right? Because if you can show them that you know them, and Tim actually said that I showed him that I knew him,
mhm.
right? I leveraged that trigger. I provided a bit of insight and a soft CTA. It made it, the decision architecture for him was really simple. It wasn't, does Thursday 2 p.m. work for you? Because then he's got to go and check his calendar. And again, the
Yeah,
decision architecture, it's hard. I'll ignore. It was
yeah.
soft. I didn't ask for anything. Actually, I
I was
said,
gonna say, what was there any CTA whatsoever?
yeah. With Tim, it was really simple. It was, after you get your feet into the desk, let us
That's right.
know, when works. I'm happy to share this insight, because again, I was looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I didn't want, and I've really haven't been in a position where I've had so much pipeline pressure on me where I have to convert deals now. And I've had that luxury, for over a decade, right? There was a moment in my career where I wasn't hitting my number, and I felt that pressure, and I was actually not living to the values of a sales professional, right? Because I was just trying to push people when they weren't ready. But when you have a healthy pipeline, when you are prospecting every day, when you've got lots of conversations happening, you've got your relationship funnels really flowing, you never have any pressure around having to get somebody into a meeting. And this is the key thing I want to share as well, right? I didn't have pressure. I could take the pressure off. I could reduce that tension for Tim, and it gives me an element of confidence and control. Yeah.
You actually enjoy the process.
Absolutely. And it's like you see this in negotiations. Yeah. When you want a deal, there's a little bit of anxiety that's starting to kick in, and the other party can feel that. And
Yeah, they
and,
can
and I've
sense it
seen this, and
100%.
I've seen this with my good friend, and him, Mark Morano.
Mhm.
I've been there in negotiations when you can just see that he's calm. There's no pressure. He's not concerned if it moves forward or if it doesn't. He's got a position, and that's incredible. It's an incredible confidence to bring to the table, right?
Mhm.
Because he's not worried. It's not like a do or die. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see this in prospecting. It becomes do or die when you're having to ask because you haven't got anything behind you.
Mhm.
So in this case with Tim, it was, I had so much behind me. It didn't matter if he booked today or next week or the week after. I still had in my mind, my process was going to be, even if he doesn't respond, I'm still going to nurture. I'm going to drip a bit more, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
give him some more insight. I'm going to maybe share what his competitors are doing, right? Hey, have you seen this? Did you know this? What about this? Because that is triggering thought, yeah? And at some
Yeah, that's
point,
great.
I can go give, ask, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Because I've given a bit. I've showed him that I'm not just here because I'm doing a generic outreach message that I've done 1 to 500 and, I want an outcome of getting a meeting. I've actually taken the time to nurture and give, right?
Yeah.
So David, it pays dividends, not only in the fact that yes, Lucia became a client, but Tim and I have formed a great relationship. And I think the biggest takeaway for our audience from this episode, from my perspective, right? It's, I want to build equity in my relationship funnel. I want as many relationships as I possibly can that look like Tim. Because why? Because I've got not just value to give, but Tim's adding great value back. Yeah. We've actually got a relationship. I know that if I ask Tim for a referral, he'll refer me to 3 or 4 people just like him. Right. And I've got a great network of people in that funnel right now. And that is transferable no matter where over the next few years, it's going to continue. It's like I've invested in really good shares and they're going to continue to pay dividends, right? That's the difference between prospecting with the methodology that we've just shared today, which was do some research, find a reason to reach out, give a little bit of value, through an insight-led approach. Don't be so forceful in asking for a meeting, right? It doesn't always have to be like that. It can be a nurture-led approach, and over time, it will deliver a return on investment.
Do you have a great product, but are struggling to reach more customers? Are you spending hours on sales activities that aren't generating results, leaving you feeling frustrated and discouraged? The Sales OS program is a step-by-step operating system that will help you slash your selling hours in half while rapidly growing your revenue. In under just 2 weeks, you can be well on your way to creating predictable revenue. In Sales OS, we'll show you how to build predictable sales pipeline, build lasting relationships with your customers, and sell more in less time. The art of negotiation and motivating and leading a successful sales team. If this sounds like something that you need in your business, visit growforum.io/sales and apply to see if you have the right mindset to achieve predictable revenue. The Sales OS program is your ticket to predictable revenue. Don't wait any longer, apply today. I love that. I love that analogy there that you mentioned, Louis. Treat it like, shares. It's an investment,
It's
right?
an
And it all
investment.
comes down to not being lazy, right? If you had to
Yeah.
sum everything up, it's just don't be lazy. It's
Yeah,
too
do the
easy to
work.
just, buy some shares because they look fancy and you want to build a portfolio, reach out to 1,000 contacts, but you're being lazy.
Yeah,
Do the research, invest the time, build a relationship, and it'll forever pay dividends. Um,
absolutely. So,
Great way
and this
to wrap up.
Yeah, and this is a perfect way to wrap up because we've got, we've got probably 2 or 3 more enablement professionals that are coming
Yeah.
on in the next couple of weeks, and that'll round out our how to sell to enablement, and then the playbook will accompany that. That'll have the persona. It'll have some messaging frameworks that we've used right to sell to those
Yeah.
people, but we've also used the insight that we've learned from them in the episodes. It'll have some cadences. It'll have some questions. It'll give our audience what they need to be able to sell to enablement. So we hope this episode has been valuable. As always, please subscribe to wherever you're listening, Dave. And anything else that we need to cover before we wrap up.
Well, I think that's it. Look out for next week's episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and folks, I know you've tuned in for me, but let's make Dave feel somewhat appreciated. So thank you, Dave, for showing up.
Louis, I'm going to disconnect your audio right now. Goodbye.